coffee maker gurgled like a fading animal in our pristine kitchen, and I couldn't help but think it was the perfect soundtrack for my marriage. Oliver Benton, 37 years old, senior account analyst for med supply distributors, standing in his granite-countered prison at 6:30 in the morning, waiting for caffeine to make the day bearable. I'm late. I'm so incredibly late. Nadine burst through the kitchen like a tornado in designer heels, her auburn hair perfectly styled despite the supposed rush. At 34, my wife had mastered the art of looking effortlessly put together even during manufactured chaos. She grabbed her travel mug, kissed the air near my cheek without actually making contact, and rushed toward the garage door. Don't forget dinner with your sister tonight. 7 sharp. And please, Oliver, try to look presentable. The door slammed before I could respond. Classic Nadine. Always moving, always climbing, always somewhere more important than here. I poured my coffee and settled at the breakfast bar, opening my laptop to review the quarterly reports that would consume my day. That's when I noticed it. Her phone, sitting abandoned next to the fruit bowl she never touched. The screen lit up with a notification. I wasn't planning to look. Privacy and all that. But the message preview was right there, glowing accusingly. Can't wait for tonight. Did you already make up a lie for your hopeless husband? My coffee mug froze halfway to my lips. The words hit like a physical blow, each one carefully chosen to inflict maximum damage. I stared at the screen, hoping I'd misread, hoping my eyes were playing tricks. They weren't. With trembling fingers, I picked up her phone. No passcode. She'd always been careless about security. The full message thread opened, and my world collapsed. The contact name made my legs give out. Victor Hale, my direct supervisor, the man who'd approved Nadine's 2 promotions in the past year, the same Victor who'd recommended her for the regional sales trainer position, the Victor who'd signed off on her travel expenses and training budgets. I slid down the kitchen cabinet until I was sitting on the cold tile floor, phone in my shaking hands, reading through months of messages that painted a picture so clear it made me nauseous. Hotel booked for the Portland conference. Room 412, as usual. Your husband seemed suspicious at the office party. Keep playing dumb. The expense reports went through. You're getting good at this. And Nadine's responses, each one a knife twist. Oliver doesn't suspect anything. He's too focused on his boring spreadsheets. I told him I was visiting my mother. He actually believed it. Sometimes I wonder how I married someone so clueless. There were photos, hotel receipts, screenshots of altered expense reports, a digital trail of betrayal so comprehensive it read like a manual for corporate adultery. But the worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the casual cruelty in their words, the way they discussed me like I was some pathetic obstacle to their grand romance, the way Nadine had weaponized my trust, turning my respect for her privacy into a shield for her deception. I sat on that kitchen floor for 20 minutes, methodically screenshotting everything. My analytical mind kicked in, the same mind Nadine found so boring, cataloging evidence with the precision that made me good at my job, travel reimbursements for training conferences that aligned perfectly with Victor's business trips, performance reviews that had been mysteriously upgraded after private meetings, hotel invoices billed to training budgets for rooms that cost more than my monthly car payment. The company handbook was clear. Relationships between supervisors and direct reports were strictly prohibited. Not just discouraged, prohibited. Grounds for immediate termination. My phone buzzed. A text from Nadine. Forgot my phone. Can you bring it to the office? I stared at the message, then at her phone still open to Victor's contact. The irony was almost beautiful. Sorry, already left for work, I typed back. You'll have to survive without it for one day. Her response came immediately. Ugh, fine. But this better not happen again. Even her irritation felt like a performance now. Had it always been this way? Had I been so blind, so trusting, so hopeless that I'd missed years of lies? I stood up slowly, my legs still unsteady. The kitchen looked different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The expensive appliances Nadine had insisted on, the granite countertops she'd claimed were an investment in our future. The wine rack filled with bottles I'd never seen her drink at home. How much of our life together had been theater? How many of her late nights, weekend conferences, and business dinners had been elaborate cover stories for this? I made a decision that surprised me with its clarity. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet. Emotional outbursts were messy, unpredictable. They left room for lies, manipulation, damage control. No, I was going to do what I did best. Analyze, document, and execute a plan. I called in sick to work, something I'd done maybe 3 times in my entire career. Then I spent the day in my basement office. the one room in the house that was truly mine, gathering evidence with the methodical precision of a forensic accountant, company policy manuals, expense report databases, travel records, email archives, all of it perfectly legal to access with my employee credentials. By 5 o'clock, I had built a case that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Not just proof of the affair, but documentation of policy violations, expense fraud, and abuse of authority that could end both their careers. The basement door creaked as I heard Nadine come home. "Oliver, where are you? We need to leave for dinner in an hour." Her voice carried that familiar note of impatience, the tone that used to make me hurry to please her. Now it just sounded like nails on a chalkboard. "Down here," I called back, saving my files to an encrypted drive. "Just finishing up some work." She appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her business attire, looking every inch the successful professional. "You've been down there all day? I tried calling you at the office. They said you were sick." "Feeling better now," I said, not looking up from my computer. "Just needed to catch up on some analysis." She descended the stairs, her heels clicking on the wooden steps. "What kind of analysis?" I turned to face her, studying her expression. She looked genuinely curious, maybe even concerned. The performance was flawless. "Expense reports," I said simply. "Looking for patterns, discrepancies. You'd be amazed what numbers can tell you about people's behavior." Something flickered across her face, too quick to be sure, but it might have been fear. "That sounds incredibly boring," she said, forcing a laugh. "Come on, we need to get ready. You know how your sister gets when we're late." "Actually," I said, standing up and closing my laptop, "I think I'm going to skip dinner tonight. Still feeling a bit off." "You can't skip dinner. I already confirmed we'd be there. Sarah's making her famous lasagna." "Then you should go. Give her my apologies." Nadine stared at me like I'd grown a second head. In our entire marriage, I'd never backed out of a family obligation. I was the reliable one, the one who showed up, who kept commitments. "Oliver, what's wrong with you today? You're acting strange." I walked past her toward the stairs, pausing just close enough to smell her perfume. The expensive one she claimed was a gift from a client. "Nothing's wrong," I said. "I'm just tired of being hopeless." The next morning, I arrived at the office an hour early. Med Supply distributors occupied 3 floors of a glass and steel monument to corporate mediocrity, and at 7 a.m., it was blissfully empty, except for the security guard and the cleaning crew. I badged into my cubicle and immediately pulled up the company directory. Victor Hale, Senior Vice President of Regional Sales, office on the executive floor. Nadine Benton, Regional Sales Trainer, reporting directly to Victor. The organizational chart told a story I'd been too trusting to see. Nadine's rapid promotion timeline coincided perfectly with Victor's divorce proceedings last year. Her salary increases had outpaced every other employee in her department. Her travel schedule mirrored his with suspicious precision. "You're here early." I looked up to find Trey Morrison hovering by my cubicle, a steaming coffee cup in his hands. Trey worked in IT, a thin guy with prematurely gray hair and a dry sense of humor that had made him one of my few actual friends at the company. "Couldn't sleep," I said, minimizing the screen. "Thought I'd get a jump on the quarterly analysis." "Uh-huh." Trey perched on the edge of my desk, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "This wouldn't have anything to do with why you looked like you'd seen a ghost yesterday morning, would it?" I'd forgotten that Trey had stopped by my cubicle yesterday before I'd called in sick. He'd made some joke about me looking like I'd been hit by a truck. "Personal stuff," I said carefully. "The kind of personal stuff that requires accessing expense databases at 7 in the morning?" Trey had always been too observant for his own good. It's what made him excellent at his job and occasionally dangerous as a friend. I made a decision. If someone was falsifying expense reports, hypothetically speaking, how would you catch them? "Hypothetically?" Trey's eyebrows rose. "Well, hypothetically, I'd look for patterns. Duplicate charges, inflated amounts, expenses that don't match actual business needs. Why?" "Just curious about the audit process." "Oliver." Trey leaned forward, lowering his voice. "In the 15 years I've known you, you've never been just curious about anything that didn't directly relate to your job. What's going on?" I stared at my computer screen, weighing my options. Trey was trustworthy, but involving him meant expanding the circle of people who knew. It meant making this real in a way that felt irreversible. "Can you access travel booking records?" I asked finally. "Depends. What kind of records?" "Hotel reservations, specifically ones booked through the corporate account but charged to training budgets." Trey was quiet for a long moment. "This is about Nadine, isn't it?" The question hit like a physical blow. What makes you say that? Because she's the only person you'd protect by asking hypothetically instead of just filing a report. He paused. And because I've seen the travel patterns you're talking about. Her bookings and Victor's have been suspiciously synchronized for months. My hands clenched into fists. You knew? I suspected. But it wasn't my business, and I figured if you hadn't noticed, maybe you didn't want to know. Trey's expression softened. I'm sorry, man. I should have said something. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. You shouldn't have. This is my mess to clean up. What are you planning to do? I pulled up the corporate ethics hotline on my screen. Follow company policy. Trey glanced around the empty office, then pulled up a chair. Before you do anything official, let me show you something. He logged into his system and pulled up a database I'd never seen before. Travel bookings cross-referenced with expense reports and credit card charges. Look at this, he said, pointing to the screen. Portland conference last month. Victor booked the penthouse suite, charged to his department budget. Nadine booked the room directly below it, charged to training expenses. Both stayed an extra night beyond the conference dates. My stomach churned as he scrolled through months of data. Chicago, Denver, San Francisco. Always the same pattern. Adjacent rooms, extended stays, charges split between departments to avoid detection. The total overspend is probably close to $30,000, Trey continued, all of it disguised as legitimate business expenses. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. Trey pulled up another screen. Look at her performance reviews. Every single one has been amended after the initial filing. Scores bumped up, comments added in Victor's handwriting. Her promotion last year was based on metrics that were altered post-submission. I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. It wasn't just an affair. It was systematic fraud. Nadine hadn't just betrayed our marriage. She'd corrupted her entire career. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Because you're a good guy who deserves better, Trey said simply, and because what they're doing is illegal. The company could face regulatory issues if this gets out improperly. What do you mean, improperly? I mean, if you just file a complaint without documentation, it becomes he said, she said. Victor has friends in HR. Nadine is charming and well-liked. They could spin this as a disgruntled husband making false accusations. He was right. I needed more than suspicions and database queries. I needed irrefutable proof. What would you do? I asked. Trey grinned, and for the first time since discovering Nadine's messages, I felt something like hope. I'd give them enough rope to hang themselves. We spent the next 2 hours building a comprehensive file. Trey walked me through the technical aspects while I provided context from the financial side. By 9 a.m., when the office started filling up with early arrivals, we had documented evidence of expense fraud, policy violations, and abuse of authority dating back 8 months. There's one more thing, Trey said as we prepared to close the files. Victor's computer automatically backs up to the company server. If there are personal communications on his work laptop, they're archived. Can you access them? Not legally. But if someone filed a formal complaint triggering an internal investigation, IT would be required to preserve all electronic communications pending review. The implication was clear. Once I filed the ethics complaint, everything would be locked down for investigation. Victor and Nadine wouldn't be able to delete evidence or coordinate their stories. Do it, I said. Are you sure? Once this starts, there's no going back. I thought about Nadine's messages calling me hopeless, about Victor's smug face during staff meetings, about the months of lies and the years of trust I'd apparently wasted. I'm sure. Trey helped me draft the ethics complaint, carefully wording it to trigger the most comprehensive investigation possible. We submitted it through the anonymous portal at 9:47 a.m., then sat back to wait. How long before something happens? I asked. Internal policy requires acknowledgement within 24 hours, initial review within 72. But given the seriousness of the allegations and the executive level involved, I'd expect movement today. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Nadine. Victor seems stressed today. Wonder what's bothering him. I stared at the message, then showed it to Trey. Think they know? I asked. Not yet, but they will soon. I typed back, maybe he's just having a bad day. Everyone gets those eventually. Her response came quickly. True. Good thing we're both too smart to let work drama affect us. The irony was so thick I could taste it. What now? I asked Trey. Now we wait, he said, and we watched them panic. By lunch, the rumors were already spreading through the office like wildfire. Carly, the receptionist whose desk faced the elevator, had the best view of the executive floor traffic and the loosest lips in the building. 3 people from corporate went up to Victor's office this morning, she whispered to me as I passed her desk, including someone from legal. An HR called Nadine out of her training session. I tried to look appropriately surprised. Really? That's weird. Right? And get this, Victor canceled all his afternoon meetings, just cleared his whole schedule. Carly leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. My friend in HR says there's some kind of investigation happening. Investigation into what? Nobody knows yet, but it must be serious if they're pulling people out of meetings. I nodded sympathetically and continued to the break room, where I found Maya Hendricks, Nadine's best friend and the department gossip queen, looking unusually subdued as she microwaved her lunch. Hey Maya, I said casually, grabbing my sandwich from the fridge. How's your day going? Oh, she said, not meeting my eyes. Just the usual chaos. Maya was normally a chatterbox who could turn a simple hello into a 20-minute conversation about office drama. Her sudden reticence was telling. I heard there's some excitement on the executive floor, I pressed gently. She glanced around the empty break room, then moved closer. Oliver, can I ask you something? Hypothetically? Sure. If someone you cared about was maybe making some poor choices at work, would you want to know about it? My pulse quickened. What kind of poor choices? The kind that could get them in serious trouble. Maya's expression was genuinely worried. I mean, we all bend the rules sometimes, right? But there's a line. Maya, what are you trying to tell me? She looked torn, clearly wrestling with competing loyalties. It's probably nothing, just office gossip. But Nadine's been, different lately, more secretive. And some of the things she said about her travel expenses, she trailed off. What things? Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but she mentioned getting reimbursed for hotel upgrades that weren't actually for business purposes, and she laughed about how easy it was to get Victor to approve anything she submitted. My sandwich suddenly tasted like cardboard. When did she say this? Last week, at happy hour. She'd had a few drinks and was bragging about how she'd figured out the system. Maya looked miserable. I told her she was being reckless, but she just laughed and said I was being paranoid. Did anyone else hear this conversation? A few people from her department, but you know how it is? Everyone was drinking, everyone was joking around. I don't think anyone took it seriously. Except they would now. Once HR started interviewing people, casual comments that seemed like harmless bragging would become evidence of intent to defraud. Maya, I said carefully, if someone from HR asks you about this conversation, you should tell them the truth? Her eyes widened. You think this investigation is about Nadine? I think if she's done nothing wrong, she has nothing to worry about. But we both knew that wasn't true. Even if the expense fraud could be explained away as poor judgment rather than malicious intent, the affair with Victor was a clear policy violation, and given the power dynamic, the company would have to take action to avoid liability. I finished my lunch quickly and returned to my desk, where I found an email waiting from HR. Please report to conference room B at 2:00 p.m. for a brief interview regarding a routine compliance matter. So it was starting. At exactly 2:00 p.m., I knocked on the conference room door and was greeted by Jennifer Walsh from HR and a man I didn't recognize wearing an expensive suit and a serious expression. Mr. Benton, thank you for coming, Jennifer said. This is David Chen from our corporate compliance team. We have some questions about expense reporting procedures in your department. I sat down across from them, trying to project calm professionalism. Of course, happy to help however I can. David opened a folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. We're conducting a routine audit of travel and training expenses. As a senior analyst, you're familiar with company policies regarding business travel? Yes. And you understand that all business expenses must be legitimate, properly documented, and directly related to company business? Absolutely. Jennifer leaned forward. Mr. Benton, we need to ask about some specific expense reports. Are you aware of any irregularities in travel bookings or expense submissions in your department? This was it. The moment where I either committed fully to this path or backed down. I've noticed some patterns that concerned me, I said carefully. That's actually why I filed a compliance report yesterday. David and Jennifer exchanged glances. You filed the anonymous report? Yes. Can you walk us through your concerns? For the next hour, I laid out everything I'd discovered, sticking to facts and avoiding speculation. I showed them the expense patterns, the travel correlations, the amended performance reviews. I was careful not to mention Nadine's phone or the personal messages. That would come out in their investigation of Victor's communications. This is very thorough, David said when I finished. How long have you suspected these irregularities? I only noticed the patterns recently. Once I started looking more carefully, the scope became clear. Mr. Benton, Jennifer said gently, we need to ask, are you aware that your wife is one of the employees implicated in this investigation? I suspected she might be, based on the travel patterns. How do you feel about that? It was a loaded question, designed to assess whether I was acting out of personal animus rather than professional obligation. I feel like policy violations should be investigated regardless of who commits them, I said. The company's integrity matters more than personal relationships. David nodded approvingly. We may need to interview you again as the investigation proceeds. In the meantime, please don't discuss this matter with anyone, especially the employees under investigation. Understood? They dismissed me, and I returned to my desk to find Trey waiting with barely contained excitement. How'd it go? He whispered. They're taking it seriously. Good. Because things are about to get interesting. Victor just got called into another meeting, and Nadine's been pacing outside HR for the past 20 minutes. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed with a text from Nadine. Can you come home early? We need to talk. I stared at the message, then showed it to Trey. She knows, he said. Yeah, she knows. I typed back. Can't leave early. Big timeline today. See you at home. Her response was immediate. This is important, Oliver. Really important. So is my job, I replied, then put my phone away. For the first time in years, work actually was more important than whatever crisis Nadine was manufacturing. Because for the first time in years, I was finally in control of something that mattered. The afternoon crawled by with agonizing slowness. Every email notification made my heart race. Every conversation in the hallway felt loaded with meaning. By 5 o'clock, the tension in the office was palpable. Victor's office had been dark all afternoon. Nadine had left early, claiming illness. Maya kept shooting worried glances in my direction. As I packed up my laptop, Carly appeared at my cubicle. Oliver, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Nadine seemed really upset when she left, like crying in the parking garage upset. Thanks for letting me know, I said, trying to sound appropriately concerned. Is everything okay? I mean, with you two? It was a fair question. Office relationships were public property, and people had noticed that I'd been acting differently. We're working through some things, I said diplomatically. Well, if you need someone to talk to, I'm a good listener. I appreciate that, Carly. Really. I drove home slowly, preparing myself for whatever scene awaited me. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, which was unusual. Nadine typically had every light blazing when she was home. I found her in the living room, sitting on the couch in the dark, still wearing her work clothes. Her makeup was smeared, and her eyes were red from crying. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Okay, I said, settling into the chair across from her. Let's talk. I know you filed the complaint. Nadine's words hung in the air between us like a challenge. She'd stopped crying and was studying my face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. What complaint? I asked, though we both knew the game was over. Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about. HR spent 3 hours grilling me today about expense reports and travel bookings. They had printouts, Oliver. Detailed analysis of every trip I've taken in the past year. I leaned back in my chair, surprised by how calm I felt. And the only person with access to that level of financial data and the analytical skills to compile it is you. Maybe you're overestimating my abilities. You did call me hopeless after all. She flinched like I'd slapped her. You read my messages. I read the one that popped up when you forgot your phone. The rest just followed naturally. Nadine stood up abruptly and began pacing the length of the living room. Jesus Christ, Oliver, do you have any idea what you've done? I've reported policy violations to the appropriate authorities. It's called following company procedure. It's called destroying my career. She whirled to face me, her composure finally cracking completely. They're talking about termination, criminal charges. Do you understand that? I understand that actions have consequences. Actions? She laughed bitterly. What actions? Having a relationship? Being happy for the first time in years? Fraud, Nadine. The word you're looking for is fraud. $28,000 in falsified expenses. Performance reviews altered after submission. Abuse of authority. I ticked off each item on my fingers. Those are the actions I'm talking about. She stopped pacing. How do you know about the performance reviews? I know about all of it. The hotel upgrades charged to training budgets, the extended stays beyond conference dates, the rooms booked on adjacent floors to avoid suspicion. I stood up, moving closer. Did you really think no one would notice? Or did you just think I was too stupid to figure it out? Oliver, her voice had gone soft, pleading. Let me explain. Explain what? How you and Victor have been stealing from the company? How you've been lying to me for months? How you've been laughing about what a clueless husband you have? It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the screenshots I'd saved. Would you like me to read your messages back to you, the ones where you discuss how easy it is to deceive me? Nadine's face went pale. You saved them. I documented everything. It's what I do, remember? Boring spreadsheets and analysis. Turns out those skills are useful for more than quarterly reports. She sank back onto the couch, her head in her hands. What do you want from me, Oliver? An apology? Begging? What will it take for you to withdraw the complaint? I can't withdraw it. It's already under investigation. You could tell them you made a mistake, that you misunderstood the data. I stared at her, genuinely amazed. Even now, caught red-handed with irrefutable evidence, she was trying to manipulate the situation. No, I said simply. No? Her voice rose. Oliver, this is my life we're talking about, my career, our financial future. Our financial future, I laughed. Nadine, I've already filed for divorce. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually recoiled, her mouth falling open. You... What? I filed the papers this morning. You'll be served tomorrow. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I've also opened my own bank account and transferred half our assets, as is my legal right. I've contacted a realtor about selling the house, and I've applied for a transfer to our Denver office. Nadine stood up slowly, her face cycling through shock, anger, and something that might have been fear. You've been planning this, she said. This whole thing. The complaint. The divorce. Everything. How long have you been scheming? Since yesterday morning, when I learned that my wife thinks I'm a hopeless fool. I never said that. You wrote it, Nadine. Multiple times. You and Victor had quite a few laughs at my expense. She started crying again, but these tears felt calculated, performed. Oliver, please, but I made mistakes. I know that. But we can work through this. Marriage counseling, couples therapy, whatever you want. What I want is for you to face the consequences of your choices. All of them. And what about your choices? Her voice turned sharp again. You chose to spy on me. You chose to destroy my career instead of talking to me like an adult. I chose to stop being a victim. The words surprised us both. I'd never thought of myself as a victim before, but that's exactly what I'd been. A victim of lies, manipulation, and casual cruelty. A victim of my own willingness to trust and forgive. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Nadine said, her voice turning cold. Your ego. You can't stand that I found someone better. Better? I laughed. Victor is a married man who's been embezzling company funds to pay for hotel rooms. If that's your definition of better, your standards are lower than I thought. He's successful, ambitious, he has vision and drive, and he's about to be fired and possibly prosecuted. Great choice, Nadine. She glared at me with pure hatred. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You're actually enjoying watching my life fall apart. I considered the question seriously. Was I enjoying it? There was definitely satisfaction in seeing justice done, in watching the consequences catch up with people who thought they were untouchable. But enjoyment felt too simple a word for the complex mixture of vindication, sadness, and relief I was experiencing. I'm enjoying not being lied to anymore, I said finally. I'm enjoying not wondering why my wife finds excuses to avoid spending time with me. I'm enjoying not feeling like a stranger in my own marriage. Our marriage could have been saved if you just talked to me instead of going nuclear. Our marriage ended the moment you decided I was too hopeless to deserve the truth. Nadine's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it reflexively. Her face went white. What is it? I asked. Victor. Her voice was barely a whisper. He's been suspended pending investigation. They've frozen his accounts and seized his company laptop. I'm sorry to hear that. She looked up at me sharply. Are you? Are you really sorry? I'm sorry that two people I trusted chose to betray that trust. I'm sorry that it came to this. But I'm not sorry for doing the right thing. The right thing, she repeated mockingly. You've destroyed 2 careers, Oliver. 2 lives. For what? Your wounded pride? For honesty. For integrity. For the principle that actions have consequences. She stood up, grabbing her purse and keys. I'm staying at Maya's tonight. Maybe for a while. That's probably best. She paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't read. You know what the saddest part is, Oliver? I actually loved you once. Really loved you, but you were so safe. So predictable. I needed more than that. You needed someone who would help you steal from your employer? I needed someone who would fight for what he wanted, instead of just accepting whatever scraps life threw at him. I am fighting, Nadine. I'm just not fighting for you anymore. She left without another word, and I stood in the empty living room listening to her car pull out of the driveway. Then I walked to the kitchen, opened a beer, and sat down at the breakfast bar where this had all started. My phone buzzed with a text from Trey. How'd it go? She's gone, I typed back. For good? For good? How do you feel? I considered the question while I sipped my beer. How did I feel? Sad, certainly. Angry, definitely. But underneath those emotions was something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Like I can finally breathe again, I replied. And for the first time in months, that was completely true. 3 weeks later, I was cleaning out my desk when Maya approached, looking nervous and guilt-ridden. Oliver, can we talk? I looked up from the box of personal items I was packing. The transfer to Denver had been approved, and my last day was Friday. Sure. She glanced around the mostly empty office. It was after 6, and most people had gone home, then pulled up a chair. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. For what? For knowing, for not saying anything, for being a coward. Maya's eyes were red-rimmed, and she looked like she hadn't been sleeping well. I knew about Nadine and Victor months ago. I saw them together at a hotel bar in Chicago when I was there for a different conference. They didn't see me, but it was obvious. I stopped packing. Why didn't you tell me? Because I'm a coward. Because I didn't want to be the one to destroy your marriage. Because I convinced myself it wasn't my business. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. But mostly because I was jealous. Jealous? Of what she had. The excitement, the romance, the feeling of being special. My marriage is comfortable, safe, boring, and I envied her for having something passionate, even if it was wrong. I sat down across from her. Maya, you couldn't have known about the financial fraud. That's not something you could have seen at a hotel bar. No, but I could have saved you months of lies. I could have given you the choice to confront it earlier, before it got this bad. Would that have changed anything? Really? Maya considered this. Probably not. Nadine was in deep by then, but you deserve to know. I appreciate you telling me now. There's something else. Maya looked uncomfortable. The other people at happy hour, when Nadine was bragging about the expense reports, they're all being interviewed by HR. Some of them are trying to claim they don't remember the conversation. And you? I told them everything, every detail I could recall. She met my eyes. It felt like the least I could do. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Maya asked, How is she? Nadine? I don't know. We haven't spoken since she moved out. She's staying with her sister now. Maya said she's applied for jobs outside the industry, but word has gotten around. The medical supply field is smaller than people think. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. She made her choices. Victor's wife filed for divorce, too, Maya continued. Took the kids and moved back to her parents' place in California. Apparently this wasn't his first affair. That surprised me. Really? Sandra hired a private investigator, found evidence of at least 2 other relationships over the past 5 years, all with subordinates. Maya shook her head. Nadine thought she was special, but she was just the latest in a pattern. The information should have made me feel vindicated, but instead, it just made me sad. Nadine had blown up her life for someone who saw her as disposable. What about the criminal charges? I asked. Still pending? The DA is reviewing the case, but the company's being cooperative. They want to send a message about internal fraud. I nodded and returned to packing. There wasn't much left. Some family photos, a coffee mug, a small plant that had somehow survived 3 years of office fluorescent lighting. Oliver? Maya's voice was hesitant. Do you think you'll ever forgive her? I don't know, I said honestly. Forgiveness feels like something I might be able to do eventually, for my own peace of mind. But forgetting? Trusting her again? No, that's not possible. She really did love you, in her own way. Maybe. But her way wasn't enough. Maya stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. It took courage. It took desperation, I corrected. Courage would have been confronting the problems in our marriage before it got to this point. Would she have listened? I thought about Nadine's messages, her casual cruelty, her complete shock when consequences finally arrived. No, I said. She wouldn't have. After Maya left, I finished packing in silence. The office felt different now, smaller somehow, less significant. In a few days, I'd be starting over in a new city, with a new team, in a new apartment I'd chosen entirely for myself. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Nadine. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for everything. You deserved better." I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it without responding. Sorry was just another word, and words were what had gotten us into this mess in the first place. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find Trey waiting by my desk with coffee and donuts. "Last day celebration?" he asked. Something like that. We ate in companionable silence, watching the office slowly fill up around us. It struck me how normal everything looked, how quickly life had moved on from the drama of 3 weeks ago. New gossip had replaced the old, different scandals were brewing. "Any regrets?" Trey asked as I powered down my computer for the final time. "About reporting them? No. About the marriage?" That was harder to answer. I regret not seeing it sooner. I regret wasting years trying to make something work that was already broken, but I don't regret ending it. "Good." Trey helped me carry my boxes to the elevator. "You know, when you first told me about finding those messages, I wasn't sure you'd go through with it. You're not exactly the vengeful type." "I'm not vengeful now. This wasn't about revenge." "What was it about?" I thought about it as we waited for the elevator. Self-respect, maybe, or just refusing to be a victim anymore. The elevator arrived, and we loaded my boxes inside. As the doors closed, I caught a glimpse of the office where I'd worked for 8 years, where I'd met Nadine, where I'd built a life that turned out to be mostly fiction. "You ready for this?" Trey asked as we descended. "Ready for what? Denver?" "Ready for starting over. Clean slate, new beginning, all that." I considered the question as we reached the parking garage. Was I ready? The honest answer was that I had no idea. Starting over at 37 felt both terrifying and liberating, but ready or not, it was happening. "I guess I'll find out," I said. We loaded the boxes into my car, and Trey handed me a business card. "What's this?" "Contact info for a friend of mine in Denver. She's a prosecutor, specializes in white-collar crime. Thought you might find the work interesting." I looked at the card. Sarah Chen, Assistant District Attorney. "You think I should change careers?" "I think you have a talent for investigation and a strong sense of justice. Might be worth exploring." We shook hands, and I got into my car. As I drove out of the parking garage for the last time, I passed Victor's reserved spot, now occupied by his replacement. The nameplate had already been changed. That evening, I had dinner at my sister Sarah's house, the family dinner Nadine and I had skipped 3 weeks ago when everything started unraveling. "So how are you really doing?" Sarah asked as we cleaned up the dishes. "Better than I expected," I said honestly. "Some days are harder than others, but overall, I feel like myself again." "When was the last time you felt like yourself?" It was a good question. I don't know, maybe not for years. I got so used to feeling like I was failing at being the husband Nadine wanted that I forgot who I actually was. "And who are you?" I dried a plate thoughtfully. "Someone who values honesty. Someone who believes actions should have consequences. Someone who won't settle for being treated like he doesn't matter." Sounds like someone worth knowing. I'm looking forward to finding out. Later that night, I sat in my empty living room. The house had sold faster than expected, and the new owners were taking possession next week, and opened my laptop. I had emails to answer, loose ends to tie up, a life to dismantle and rebuild. But first, I pulled up the contact information Trey had given me and composed a brief email to Sarah Chen in Denver. Maybe it was time for more than just a change of scenery. Maybe it was time for a complete reinvention. As I hit send, my phone buzzed with another message from Nadine's number. "The DA offered me a plea deal. Probation and restitution in exchange for testifying against Victor. I'm going to take it." This time, I didn't delete the message immediately. Instead, I typed back, "That sounds like a smart decision." Her response came quickly. "Will you testify too, if they ask?" "If they ask, I'll tell the truth. That's all I've ever done." "I know. That's what I always respected about you, even when I was too stupid to appreciate it." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Good luck, Nadine. I hope you figure out what you really want out of life." "I want to be someone worthy of the respect you used to have for me." "Then be that person," I replied. "Just not for me, for yourself." I turned off my phone after that and finished my emails. Tomorrow I would drive to Denver and start a new chapter. Tonight I would sit in the ruins of my old life and acknowledge both the pain of what I'd lost and the possibility of what I might find. For the first time in years, the future felt entirely my own. 6 months later, I was sitting in a Denver courtroom watching Victor Hale's sentencing hearing. I'd flown back specifically for this moment, though I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to see the story through to its end. Victor looked smaller than I remembered, his expensive suit unable to disguise the weight he'd lost, or the way his shoulders had begun to curve inward. His lawyer was making a final plea for leniency, citing his client's cooperation with the investigation and his family's financial hardship. "Your Honor," the defense attorney said, "Mr. Hale deeply regrets his actions and has already paid a significant price. His reputation is destroyed, his marriage is over, and he faces financial ruin from the civil restitution requirements." Judge Martinez, a stern woman in her 60s, listened without expression. When the lawyer finished, she consulted her notes. "Mr. Hale, you've pleaded guilty to embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of authority. The prosecution has recommended 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation and full restitution to your former employer. Do you have anything to say before I impose sentence?" Victor stood slowly. "Your Honor, I take full responsibility for my actions. I betrayed the trust of my employer, my colleagues, and my family. I used my position of authority to benefit myself at the expense of others, and I deeply regret the pain I've caused." It was a carefully crafted statement, no doubt written by his lawyer, but as I listened to Victor's voice crack slightly on the words, "deeply regret," I found myself wondering if any part of it was genuine. "Mr. Hale," the judge continued, "your crimes weren't committed in a moment of weakness or desperation. They were systematic, calculated, and sustained over many months. You exploited your position of trust and involved a subordinate employee in your scheme, creating additional victims in the process." She paused, looking directly at Victor. "The court sentences you to 24 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You will pay full restitution to med supply distributors in the amount of $43,000, plus court costs and fees. Additionally, you are permanently barred from holding any position of financial authority in any company receiving federal contracts." Victor's knees buckled slightly, and his lawyer had to steady him. 24 months was longer than the prosecution had recommended. The judge wasn't feeling merciful. As the bailiff led Victor away in handcuffs, I caught sight of Nadine sitting in the back of the courtroom. She looked different, thinner, older, wearing a simple black dress instead of her usual designer clothes. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, sad smile before looking away. Outside the courthouse, she approached me as I waited for my ride to the airport. "Oliver." "Nadine." We stood there awkwardly, two people who had once shared everything and now had nothing in common except a complicated past. "Thank you for testifying," she said finally. "Your testimony was fair. You could have made it much worse for both of us." "I just told the truth." "I know, that's what I meant." She shifted her purse to her other shoulder. "How's Denver?" "Good. Really good, actually. I like the work." I'd taken Trey's advice and applied to the DA's office. My background in financial analysis had made me a valuable addition to their white-collar crime unit. For the first time in my career, I felt like my work actually mattered. "I'm glad," Nadine said, and she seemed to mean it. "You look happy." "I am, most days." "I'm working at a nonprofit now," she said. "Financial literacy education for low-income families. The pay is terrible, but it feels like penance, you know, trying to help people instead of taking advantage of them." "That sounds meaningful." "It is." She looked down at her hands. "Oliver, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay." "Do you think I'm a fundamentally bad person? I know what I did was wrong, but do you think I'm just rotten at my core?" It was such a vulnerable question, so different from the confident, manipulative woman I'd been married to. I considered my answer carefully. "I think you made bad choices," I said finally. "I think you got caught up in the excitement of something that felt forbidden and lost sight of your values. But I don't think you're evil, Nadine. I think you're someone who convinced herself that what she wanted was more important than who she hurt getting it." She nodded slowly. "That's fair. More than fair, probably. Have you figured out what you want now? Really want?" "I want to be someone I can respect when I look in the mirror. Someone who earns what she has instead of stealing it. Someone who tells the truth even when it's hard." She looked up at me. "Someone like the person I used to be, before I decided that wasn't enough." "That's a good goal. What about you? What do you want?" I thought about my new life in Denver. The challenging work, the apartment with a view of the mountains, the slow process of building friendships with people who knew nothing about my past, the woman I'd started seeing, another prosecutor who shared my love of hiking and terrible science fiction movies. I want to keep becoming the person I am now, I said. Someone who doesn't accept being treated badly. Someone who stands up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Even when it means destroying people you used to care about? Especially then. Nadine nodded again. I understand, and for what it's worth, I'm proud of you, for finding your backbone, for refusing to be a victim, for becoming someone worthy of respect. Thank you. My ride arrived, an Uber to take me to the airport. As I got into the car, Nadine called out to me. Oliver, I hope you're happy, really genuinely happy. You deserve that. I hope you find what you're looking for too, I replied. As the car pulled away, I watched her in the side mirror until she disappeared around a corner. It felt like the final period at the end of a very long, painful sentence. On the plane back to Denver, I opened my laptop and reviewed the files for my next case, a complex embezzlement scheme involving a healthcare nonprofit. The parallels to my own experience weren't lost on me, but they no longer felt personal. They felt like puzzles to solve, injustices to correct, stories that needed proper endings. My phone buzzed with a text from Trey. Saw the news about Victor's sentencing. How do you feel? Like justice was served, I typed back. Any regrets? I thought about the question as the plane climbed above the clouds. Did I regret the path that had led me here? The destruction of my marriage? The upheaval of my entire life? The months of pain and uncertainty? No, I replied. No regrets. And as I settled back in my seat to watch the landscape pass below, I realized that for the first time in years, that was completely true. I'd lost a wife, a house, a life I'd thought I wanted, but I'd gained something more valuable: self-respect, purpose, and the knowledge that I would never again accept being treated as if I didn't matter. The promotion Nadine had been so desperate for had cost her everything, but my promotion, from victim to someone who refused to be victimized, had given me a life worth living. As the plane touched down in Denver, I smiled and whispered to myself, promotion approved.